The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, Episode 60.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hey everybody, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter, aka Father Fett, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Today we're discussing The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 4, The Siege. Joining me today on the panel are Mike Creevy. Hey Mike.
Hey Father. Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Second up this evening is Thomas Sanherho.
Hey Father.
Howdy, howdy. And third and finally this evening, we have Angela Ciolana.
Hello, class. Who can name a trade route?
The Hidden Way?
Yes. Mr. Legends.
I think.
I would just raise my hand and yell out McClunky.
McClunky. That's the answer to everything at this point.
I'm still on that.
Well, speaking of that, this past week was Life Day, indeed, on November 17th. And of course, that meant that Disney Plus has released the Star Wars Lego Holiday Special on Disney Plus. So hopefully you all get a chance to go check that out and enjoy that with your family. We also recorded a special holiday special episode of our own, which is what Mike was referring to. We were all on the podcast last night recording this episode. And so we have our own holiday special to share with you, discussing all things Life Day and, of course, the new Lego Star Wars Holiday Special. And we are going to make it available early as an exclusive to our patrons at patreon.com/StarQuest as a thanks for their generous support that makes this podcast possible. So if you'd like to hear that and you're not yet a patron, definitely do so and go to patreon.com/StarQuest. And it is definitely going to be coming soon. And it will also release on the normal podcast feed later on this year, but patrons have exclusive early access to it. So to get you all in the Life Day holiday spirit. So we had a blast recording it last night. So
it was a lot of fun.
I hope you guys all enjoy it too when you listen to it.
There's some big surprises.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So back to The Mandalorian, because there were also some big surprises in this episode as well, which was really cool to get to. So, of course, first of all, I mean, just in general, what did you guys think of this episode?
We got the return of Dank Farrik. It's still making an appearance. And I thought it was good old Star Wars. You know, there was action, there was daily life, humor, themes of right and wrong. Love the humor, though, in this episode. A lot of great little moments here and there that really sort of made this especially memorable, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was, and I don't want to mention anything specific because we'll do that, but right off the bat, it just really, I think, organically brought the child. I go back and forth. I'm not apologetic about calling him Baby Yoda. I know, but if it slips, and he's right over here, over my shoulder as usual, back in the background. But everybody talked about, I think, in the first episode of the season, how he was a little more muted, not tucked away in a way that didn't make sense. I think it really fit in that episode. And he's stolen the show so much, understandably, but it's called The Mandalorian, and we were talking before, I think even just in the second or third episode, like they've done such a good job at really keeping that front and center, that this is really Mando's show. It's really in a sense about him, and everybody else is part of that. But this one, I really felt like they really kind of opened it up and really kind of gave him some awesome screen time. Some of my favorite through the whole show so far, both seasons.
Absolutely.
But even with that, it wasn't a whole lot of screen time, you know, and it's so nested within the relationship with him and Din, you know, and so I'm sure all those themes we'll get into later, but I just really like those, especially, you know, seeing the two of them as this little team, you know,
right.
is really special.
Well, I like the email we got this last week from one of our listeners, Catherine, equated Mando to St. Christopher. And I thought that was such a fantastic, I don't know how I didn't catch that one, because, you know, it's the Mandalorian with this little figure on his shoulder that is kind of the future of the Force. So that was a really neat thought. And then going into this episode, like with that thought, you kind of see that same thing, although it opens with a questionable fathering decision. By Din, but other than that, it was pretty good. You know, he does care for the child, and it's the top of his list of priorities. The thing I really liked about this episode was, if you pay attention, you know the twist at the end of the episode early, because this is a research facility, and it's a research facility because it's a research facility just like the one that was in Rogue One. It's the same structure of it and everything like that. So you go, oh, hey, that's not a barracks, that's a research facility.
Good catch.
Yeah, I was like, hey, this is gonna turn on them as they get through there.
See, I thought you were referring to the ominous music that's played when the repairman goes to the Razorcraft, and I totally called that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that twist I totally had, but the other one, that's a great catch. Did you guys notice? And I think what I loved about this episode, and I'll point them out as we go through, but there were a bunch of callbacks to A New Hope. So, like, uncanny how many callbacks there were to A New Hope. It was very obviously intended to be that way. So, definitely has that Star Wars feel, and Baby Yoda kind of stole it for me this time as well. I imagine, Thomas and Mike, you wouldn't let your toddler try to help you fix your
the wiring.
The wiring.
The electrical. Nope.
Well,
my wife barely lets me touch the electrical. Right?
I just love how it comes out of, like your intro and like just black, and before anything you hear that like classic like dying starship sound effect, before you even see it, and then and he's talking to him, and it's just like, where is he? And the way they swing around and they zoom and you see him, I'm like, oh my God. And it's funny because today, we're putting candles in the windows, and I look over at one point and Noelle's got like the plugs, and she's going to like plug it in, and I'm like, honey, why don't you let me do that? And she's like, yeah, I don't want to get zapped like Baby Yoda.
Nice.
And I'm like, this is too uncanny here. So
life lessons.
That was fun.
Yeah, it's one of those things when your kids always want to help, though. So and then on the turn of that too, that's a tiny little crawl space, and Den was doing the best he could with the equipment that he had.
I don't think I've ever rewound a Star Wars scene so many times. Like this and Vader at the end of Rogue One are the two scenes I've probably just watched for their own merit the most already. And the puppet work on it, just he's trying so hard. Like, he's like, no, take the red wire. Huh? No.
Don't get them close to each other. No.
Yeah, that was great direction. You just see Mando's helmet with like smoke coming out. That was great.
Oh my gosh.
And I've jumped in enough vehicles to have that same sort of fear with jumper cables of not wanting to touch the two poles.
It reminded me a little of when in The Office, when Michael Scott's trying to explain like how to jump a car in a video for his future son, and he's like, and then you take this one and you put it here, and then you put this one just anywhere, and I'm like, no, that's not.
So a couple of points before we really jump into the recap. This episode was also written by Jon Favreau, so he's got most writing credits for I think he's gotten them all so far for this season.
Yeah.
But this was directed by Carl Weathers. So, Grief Karga. He was not the first actor in The Mandalorian to also direct, though. that would be Taika Waititi, who, of course, does the voice for IG-11 back in season 1. But that's pretty cool that he got to direct this episode. It's called The Siege, and I'm sort of baffled as to why it was called The Siege. I don't know if you guys picked up on what was meant by that. So it was very much more go in, blow up the research facility and leave. And I don't quite know what they were. I don't know. Did you guys have any thoughts?
Well, what's the definition of a siege? That's my question. Because I just assumed it applied to that particular situation. Like originally, weren't they wanting to get weaponry from that facility? Wasn't that kind of part
all
of the
that
point?
Grief wanted was he wanted the Empire off his planet.
Right.
Uh-huh.
He just wanted them done.
So,
he didn't want anything to do with the black market weapons.
Okay.
So a siege is according
Did you
to
Google it too?
Yep, according to Google Dictionary.
But wait, I'll do it without Google.
You know.
I'll do it without Google. It's when you attack a fortress and you keep it in place, like you make the people inside wait, and they have to either come out and attack you, or they have to starve inside the fortress.
Yeah.
So
think
it
of
would require a large force.
Think of Jericho in the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
They sieged Jericho for a number of I think it was like a week. But yeah, so the Google definition is a military operation in which enemy forces surround a town or building, cutting off essential supplies with the aim of compelling the surrender of those inside. So
maybe.
So not what they do.
Right.
It's from the perspective of like Moff Gideon, maybe.
I was trying to think more meta and go that route, but I still, I don't know. It feels a little.
Well,
So-
another deeper dive: a military blockade of a city or a fortress with the intent of conquering by attrition or a well-prepared assault.
Well, maybe that's what
pretty
it is.
well-prepared assault, but yeah,
This is more a sapping, technically speaking.
right. Yeah,
That's when you go in and you destroy a resource inside the fort so that they have to leave.
Yep.
You blow up
It sounds
the
like
walls
somebody
or-
was just like, what would be a cool one-word name for this
Right.
episode?
Yeah. Let's just use like this kind of military term.
And the thing is, you can't call it. Well, I won't say what it is because we don't want to spoil. Well, people probably heard of it. what the facility is, you don't want to call it
The
that
laboratory.
at the front, or you're right, or call it the facility. Like, well, that's the best level in GoldenEye, but it's not. That's going back. But So I don't know what else you would. Yeah, I don't know what else you'd call it. I was just excited that to my many watchings of the trailer, I think that's it for footage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we
And
covered everything
what's
now.
really cool is season 1, it was more or less like that, but there were some clips, not many, but there were some clips from like episode 7 or 8, but I'm excited because we're only halfway into the season and I know nothing from here, visual
I have a
cues, any of
feeling-
it.
Yeah, I have a feeling with the way this one ends, they could not show you anything else, or it would be way too much of a giveaway.
That's what I
at
keep.
this
Yeah,
point.
and even our. I don't want to spoil anything else either, too, but one of our friends of the show, I'll put it that way, who made a comment about just this season blowing our minds and stuff. So some insiders who have hinted as much. But
So let's jump back into it. I guess don't know what the siege is, but we'll take it with we'll go with that. The episode did start with, of course, Baby Yoda trying to fix the help Din fix his ship, and we've kind of already talked about how cute and adorable and totally not safe for Baby Yoda that was. But needless to say, Din needs to go to Navarro to get his ship repaired so he can continue to go on his search for Ahsoka. And so we then swap to see Cara Dune just really be her best. She's down in the sewers, and she's taken out all the thugs who have kind of camped out in the old abandoned Mandalorian covert.
Which I have to say, that scene is so awesome because she does not draw her weapon until the very last moment. She clears them all out. And the only reason she has to draw her weapon is because there's one still up. And so she draws her weapon to take him out and then puts it away. And that's it. That's the only time she used her weapon in that whole scene. Everything else was someone else's weapon.
it was so funny too, because I vaguely remembered that somewhere in, I want to say, I don't know, August to October time frame, 2019, when they were doing a lot of the promo stuff, for Mandalorian season 1, they had a panel, and Gina Carano, like, they were talking just kind of, banter and stuff, and Gina Carano just said something about, like, just that morning she was, filming a fight scene in a sewer, for season 2. And I just was like, okay, well, I know you don't die in season 1, like my mind's just doing all so, but that was kind of cool. Cause that's like, this much later after I had seen that interview, I was like, wow, cool. Cause I guess I had heard some other things that they're either filming, I don't know if they're filming now or they're getting started with filming for season 3, because, Jon Favreau was saying that with, most of the characters wear masks and stuff, and the volume, they're able to kind of move forward, which is just awesome. So, but I was like, that's this scene. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it really showcased her physicality and her wrestling background, which was the way that she was throwing those thugs around was pretty awesome.
Was anybody disappointed that one of those Aqualicious didn't lose a limb like Ponda Baba?
Would have been hard to justify that one. Although they're in the torch room, right? So they could have turned the Beskar furnace on and made that happen if they had wanted to.
Might have been a little too violent at that point. I don't know.
I think really the first thing, like the big takeaway from that scene for me was just like, well, okay, we pretty much would have guessed as much, but the armorer she's not there. She's moved on. So, she's probably going to show up again at some point.
Yep. And I think it was important to show Kara as kind of the marshal. And she's, cleaning up the city, and apparently has done more in the sector too, in terms of just cleaning things up and getting rid of all the crime. I also want to point out that would be point number 1 of a connection with episode 4. Like Angela, that you had just kind of made that connection. So there's a bunch of them. So do my best to continue to point those out.
Okay, before we go too much further, she picks up a pet here too.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys saw the concept art at the end of the show, but in one of the pieces of concept art, that little guy can breathe fire. Apparently.
Oh, really? I missed that.
I'm looking forward to seeing that happen.
Sweet. I know on, I don't remember Wikipedia or something. It was called a lava meerkat. So like.
So breathing fire makes sense. Yeah.
Right. So I wouldn't mind having a lava breathing meerkat as a pet. So they, Din and Baby Yoda do land on Navarro. I was very happy that he didn't crash on Navarro like Trask. But the Razor Crest is definitely in pretty tough shape. And Grief, Karga, and Kara both are waiting there to meet Din and welcome him back to Navarro. And Grief sets his men on repairing the ship, and there was the one brief moment of ominous music and Repairman that I very much clued into that something was going to happen with that.
So do you remember that species from Clone Wars? The Mimbanese, I guess, from Mimban, which was that was a couple of episodes, but the one with Krell. Do you remember Krell was like a really harsh leader, and they had to overcome him? There was like a fight. Mimban was, Mimban is like mud world and stuff. And so the Mimbanese were, I guess, trained because they had the ability to like hide really quickly in the mud. So it was sort of like kind of a sneaky sort of species, I guess. So it was, you see those big eyes and you're like, what are you going to be up to?
He's a sneaky guy.
Yeah. Fits his personality. We don't find out what happens to that until the end of the episode. So we'll wait on that. And so Grief and Kara are walking him through the city, and Grief is telling Din that Marshal Dune is responsible for cleaning up the town, and they head off to one of the buildings, and Easter egg here is it's visible for just a few seconds, but there's a statue of IG-11.
Statue of IG-11. Yes, I noticed that. I was like, I told my kid, pause it. And I was like, what do you guys see? And they're like, what? I don't know. I'm like, just look at the statue. It's right there. So he's the hero of the town, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one of the things I really like.
He should be.
Right. Yeah. Because he came in and took all those stormtroopers out. But one of the things I really like about this series is that they're not equivocating about time. Like the passage of time happens in big chunks, and they're just focusing on the action. So they're letting a lot of the passage of time go, because you get the impression that he's kind of just coming back, and it hasn't been very long. It's only been, like 3 episodes for us or 4 episodes for us. But the actual fact is it's been a long time, because they've been able to rebuild the city and all this kind of stuff. And then, so it almost bothered me that the show handles the repair of the Razor Crest so quickly, except that you have to remember that it's doing the same thing even inside of the single episode. It's not showing you that days have passed. It's just showing you that, okay, here's this action point here's the information point where we get what we're doing, and then here's the action point. But there may have been a week, 2 weeks in that spot there between the two of them.
I can also sort of headcanon that on Trask there was maybe the major repairs that were completed. And so maybe they didn't have as much to do on Navarro.
It's more aesthetic
it still looked
stuff.
pretty beat up.
Right, yeah.
It still looked pretty beat up.
Well, and speaking of time, what was really cool about this next scene is they go inside this school, and Grief wants to just leave the child there while they talk business, and all the kids start to talk and giggle just like any kid would, where some strange looking being comes and joins the class. And
I felt so sad. I was like, I was that weird kid in school. I feel for you, dude.
Yep.
He doesn't care at all. They just sit him there. He's like,
yep.
And then he sees the cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently French macaroons have made an appearance in Star Wars now.
Are they made? Is there a blue milk base?
Right. That's why it's so vibrant.
Well, did you know that macaroons actually became popular because of 2 Carmelite nuns that started making them in the French Revolution? No. Yeah, that's a whole thing. Go look that up.
Wow.
Listeners.
That's awesome.
Cool story.
But before we jump into that adorableness, because there's some really cool things to point out there, but the whole time thing, the first time I watched this, I'll be honest, I was less focused on Baby Yoda's antics, and I was reading the captions, because the captions are telling what the teacher droid is saying. Right. And the teacher droid was talking about the current capital of the New Republic is on Chandrilla, within the core, and which puts it at the same time frame as roughly the novels of the Aftermath trilogy. So, I mean, we already knew that, but it kind of more solidifies it in that, where in later on, Hosnian Prime is where the capital is, but it doesn't get shifted there until later. So,
and that's kind of another connection to the original trilogy too, because I guess for people who are not like familiar with that name, that was where Mon Mothma was from.
Yep. Yep.
So pretty cool.
And I think at this point, according to Last Shot, the novel, I think Han and Leia are living on Chandrilla as well, and
that's where he was born.
It's where,
actually.
Yep. So just to kind of put this into, I mean, they're not going to make an appearance in The Mandalorian, but that's kind of what's happening on the other end of the galaxy right at this point, which is just kind of fun to kind of put it into that timeline. And the teacher droid also mentions the Acadies Maelstrom, the
Akadezi.
There you go.
I wrote down the pronunciation. I was like, I know I'm going to have to pronounce this later.
Is that the one from Solo?
That is the one from Solo.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
It's the one that surrounds Kessel and its moons. So another cool connection to other Star Wars things that I just wanted to point out. So I had to go back and then watch Baby Yoda do his thievery.
Well, and I like this scene too, because it's in the bar. It's like the former bar has been converted into the school. And then this is the second time we've seen a town that's being reclaimed by a marshal and has a school, so they're very much getting into the concept of things becoming re-civilized after the Empire leaves. So that's a neat twist for the show to be kind of pushing into.
You wonder if while they're gone, Baby Yoda just turns to someone. He's like, I force pushed fire out of this room. And, just looking around like, yeah, but I can't rewire my dad's spaceship. So everybody's got limits.
That sounds like a quote for a t-shirt. I like the focus on the schools though, because you said, it's been in 2 different episodes now, and just that whole notion of the children and they're the future, and giving them an education and having that an essential part of what the people see as good for the community, I think is a good thing for them to point out and highlight. So Baby Yoda is apparently going to do some learning while Dad, the Mando, is off to do some work, and they go back to the office, and we encounter the Mythrol from season 1.
I like that he vapors too.
That was a great addition.
He just sprays out. It's like, oh, okay, all right.
Well, that fear reflex is probably pretty high with seeing Din walk in the office.
Well, it makes me wonder if they had that plot line planned for him or not, or if it was just going to be a one-off with Horatio Sands, because, it felt almost a little bit like with Grief Karga, where it was, and they said behind the scenes, that he was supposed to just be in it and die, but then they're like, oh, he works pretty well. And then it's like, oh, wait, he had the best car in his chest, or in his vest. So, he can come back. So I thought that was pretty brilliant, because we never really knew. I mean, he was his first bounty in the show, that we saw, but we never knew what it was for. He's just the smooth talker. And so that was kind of cool. I thought it made a lot of sense.
Plus, it gives us more insight into Grief's character, that he actually allowed Mythrol to pay off his debt. I mean, granted, I don't know how long Mythrol lived, but that's a pretty long payment time.
I tried to look it up, and there's nothing out there on the species. So
yeah.
But I have a feeling from the way they negotiate later, I'll just cut 100 years off your sentence. Yeah. I don't think that there's any way that he's going to live for that whole whole length of time.
And regardless, Grief Karga is not going to live that long.
Right.
So I found Mythrol to be, he was kind of the character that I felt was more like the eyes of the audience.
Yeah, he's the everyman kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like all of us want to be Din or Cara, and like just walk in and just command the situation and kick the Empire's butt and but instead I feel like most of us, and I can relate to this, where it's like I'm Mythrol, where I'm good with computers, but I'm scared of heights. I'm scared of heat, and
lava.
Right?
Hey, but he's pretty handy with a blaster. He gets at least one stormtrooper throughout the course of this thing.
My wife and I laughed so hard at the whole. There's no guardrail on this thing.
OSHA problems.
Because there never is. That's the whole. Han and Kylo, Ben out there. Just everybody. It's like, why you guys can't afford a guardrail?
Yep.
The space station is massive. Come on.
That's another connection episode 4 that I found, where Obi-Wan goes to cut the tractor beam and is out there crawling on that without the guardrails.
I think it's the same display too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So Mythrol is, and I mean, he's now paying off his debt, and he's allowed to come along for this mission to take out the Imperial base. As they think is still located on Navarro, and that's where the stormtroopers came from. The season finale of season 1. That's where all the stormtroopers came from when they attacked the town. And Cara and Grief want to remove the Empire from Navarro. So they ask Din for his help, and since he has to stick around and get his ship prepared, he agrees to help them. And I was surprised at how quickly the mission went. I sort of was just expecting it to take a lot longer than it did, and it really didn't take that long at all.
Well, if their plan is to overheat it with lava, you probably don't have that much time anyway. You know, so
I'm used to things in Star Wars just not working out as well as that.
But see, if they work out well, that means that there's a tracking device involved.
True.
Well, and there was always, of course, the twist of it's not an Imperial base, and
right.
You know, and then they had to add some urgency in trying to get the information. But we'll get to that, because first they have to go scout this place out, and so they head out there with Mithral's speeder, and they want to sneak in, overload the reactor, and escape, and that's it. So they get to the Imperial base, and I keep using air quotes for that, but that's what they think it is. And Din manages to get the lift working. He has to jetpack up to the landing platform above.
That's one way to put it, Father. He manages to get it working. It was great comedic timing. It was like, hold on, like he flies up there and then Mithral's just kind of like, what is this guy doing? You know, and then you just see this like stormtrooper just like fall down, plunk, and then the door opens immediately. It's like
okay. I don't even know if like Kara and like Mithral heard it. I think Grief did, doesn't he? Like you hear very faint like laser blasts. He's like.
Well, Kara and Mithril were still arguing about the little blowtorch that he had, where he's like, "Hey, this thing's rated for plumbing." You know, that he is a great stand-in, and I love the way that he's acted, and throughout the whole episode, he's just a really good kind of stand-in for us, like you said. He's the everyman. You're lucky I even brought this thing.
I always loved him, you know, on when he was on Saturday Night Live and everything. So and I know he's like a big Star Wars fan, so that was just it's fun to see him in this role.
So they take the lift all the way up to the landing platform, and then Mithral notices the Mint Trexler Marauder and is very happy and knows that it'll make a lot of money on the black market if they were to take it. And this is just another example of the Mandalorian taking all these like B characters and vehicles and making them relevant, which is just so cool. And Mithral would be another example of a character that's definitely that way. The Marauder comes into play later, of course, in the episode, so it's not just there for looks. So they do get inside the base, and they hit the command center right off the bat, which was the smart thing to do. Take out the communications, and they take out the Imperial in there, and they shut off all the security feeds, and they sneak back to the entrance of the heat shaft, where they are going to basically overload the reactor and blow the base to smithereens.
All right, before we get there, I just had this moment of wondering when Gina Carano was like choking the guy out, like she does that. That's a thing that she knows how to do, right? Yeah. I'm wondering, as the actor having that done to them, like, you know, how was that? What was that experience like? Because I was watching it, and I'm like, how tightly is she holding him? Does she? Because she throws her weight around a lot in this series.
Mm-hmm. He's actually a guy who just like really made her mad on set,
right? She just grabs him. Or they just tell her, you know, go in and do whatever you would do. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it makes you wonder how much she had to say in how that played out. You know, and back to the sewer confrontation. How many of those moves was she just like, here, let me show you what I can do, and choreograph it that way. Yeah, she's pretty awesome as this character. They get to the door for the reactor, where the reactor is, and this was a fun thing. They have Mithral slice the door, which I don't know if that's been used in canon before. I guess it probably has been, but okay.
The sequel trilogy it has
Okay.
several times.
Okay. Because
remember. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say. Oh my gosh, my DJ, his character, he was a slicer from episode.
Oh,
8.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, I've always liked that term because that came from Legends. It's the equivalent of a hacker, but in Star Wars they called them slicers. So,
but the electronics version.
Yes.
So they can slice electronics too, so they can hack
right.
blaster pistols and everything.
Right. So Mithril slices into the door controls and opens the door, and then he is tasked to go out and drain the coolant lines, which is that moment where, yeah, Grief just commands him to go do it, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm afraid of heights and heat and lava, and there's no guardrail." But he does a good job. I mean, he gets out there and slices
a lot faster than I would have.
Yeah. I think. I mean, I don't think that I'm scared of heights per se, but I would be a little more, frozen on the spot kind of feeling.
Well, I think it kind of gives lie to the relationship that he and Grief have here. That Grief doesn't really hold anything over him. Like you kind of get that sense that there's not really. Grief saved him from whatever his fate was, and he owes that debt freely. The two of them just are never going to admit that he owes that debt to him, so he's paying it off. Right. And that relationship is fun to see played out in that way. So he does drain the coolant lines, and so the lava starts to kind of bubble up and obviously going to cause the whole place to overheat and explode. And so they begin their escape. And as they're going out, of course, this is where the first twist happens. They encounter these Imperial scientists who are desperately trying to purge their drives of all their data. And Din and the crew show up and take them out. But then they walk by these pods that have kind of living organisms of some kind in them. Very reminiscent of the Rise of Skywalker, the Snoke pod, cloning pod. So that whole thing. Of course, it's important to point out that those scientists had the same emblem on their uniforms as Dr. Pershing, and that's connected to Kamino in episode 2. So we're finally getting the plot on why the client wanted the child to begin with, why Moff Gideon wants the child. We're moving forward on that plot, and the find the Jedi and find Ahsoka plot is not the one that's being focused on here. And I like how they're able to kind of weave both of those plots together through this season.
Well, and I think I want to throw out there too, I was looking this up like a week or two ago because the Dr. Pershing thing was on my mind. And I thought, and that was neat because I didn't have any reason to believe he'd be in this episode. And there was all the speculation last year about his patch. And it was tricky because I was on board with that, but I couldn't ever really get a good look at it. But now, I mean, it's like I think it's pretty clear that it's the Kamino, sort of patch. And now seeing these other guys. And so I don't know if you guys had mentioned, I saw in the discussion somewhere, we were talking about, that whole thing with, is the child a clone? And all we have on that, as far as I remember, maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know Din brought that up to Queel.
Right.
Said something about, I think he's a strand cast. And now in canon, I've heard in some of the books, they're officially saying that Snoke was a strand cast, like officially. But then Queel immediately rejects it and just says, no, I don't think so. I worked in the gene farms. This one looks, he says he's too ugly. I'm like, says the Ugnaught,
Right.
I guess to him, but he says this one looks evolved, So that, I guess that really obviously is one of the big things that remains to be seen, but
this raises all the questions about the child. Right. Dom was throwing out there the idea that what if Baby Yoda is a clone of Yoda, because in the transmission that Dr. Pershing communicates to Moff Gideon, he talks about the trials that they're conducting and that they have some promising results, but the body rejected the blood. And so he doubts that they'll find another donor with a higher M count.
Yep,
I like how that
was excellently played.
It's in it, but not in it.
Right.
We don't have to say the word. But everybody knows. Yeah.
But it was pointed out that in episode 1, when Qui-Gon tests Anakin's blood, the comments with Obi-Wan are basically not even Master Yoda has a midichlorian count this high. And so the implication is that Yoda himself has a super high M count. And so that the question is, well, does that mean that Baby Yoda is a clone of Yoda, therefore he has a high M count, and that's why Moff Gideon is after him? But I think
this actually brings up some really, really interesting questions too, because there are some things that are said about Anakin and his birth, from the Force, that he may have been a Sith exercise himself. Like he may have.
I was just going to bring
Strandcast himself. So Anakin may have been a Strandcast. And then if this M count thing is all related to the Strandcasts, right? If they're all like these genetic things, then Master Yoda has an M count, which means something, And Qui-Gon didn't test Anakin until after he found out that he had this immaculate birth situation going on, right? So it's a really interesting thing to now know. We might actually learn more about Yoda from all of the things that are happening here.
Can I come to the rescue for a second of the people that have no idea what we're talking about? Because I know there's some people out there who are like, what are you talking about, M count? So for those like people who are not understanding what M count means or midichlorian, I think we used that word once already. That midichlorians are according to Wikipedia, which is a great summary, midichlorians were intelligent microscopic life forms that lived symbiotically inside the cells of all living things. And when present in sufficient numbers, they could allow their host to detect a pervasive energy field known as the Force. So in other words, if you have a high M count, then you're likely to be very Force sensitive. Thank you. You may continue.
There you go. No, and I because I was just like my mind started. I'm so glad Thomas mentioned that, because I don't want to dare to hope too much, but by the same token, like none of us ever expected, I don't think, or at least I didn't, and I think most people probably didn't, when that little green dude, pulls that blanket down, you see the Yoda ears, and you're like, what? Like how we all felt like, I never thought that we were going to see even the remotest like exploration of the Yoda species. That's something Lucas didn't even really explore. And so what isn't possible now? And one thing that I think is really interesting is, remember, the child and Anakin are the same age.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So,
that's very true.
So that, because he's 50 years old, and that's, at this point of the canon, that's exactly, and people pointed that out. So wouldn't that be absolutely awesome if we somehow get like, an actual more canonical sort of Anakin origin story out of this show, and a connection to the child, and like, oh my gosh, like that's like, you can do that, I wouldn't trust anyone better than, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau to do that, but man, that would be awesome.
Well, if I can talk about the music during this scene, there is a little bit of the Kylo Ren / First Order theme song in when they're talking about everything. The track is called The Experiment. And so some people actually were saying that, I was looking on YouTube under this track, and some people were saying that they could hear like the Snoke kind of theme in there also. I think that's just because of the men's choir kind of sound and sort of the low tones that they use for that. But I think that was definitely intentional, a connection because of what we know coming into this from the last movie.
Right.
This is such a fascinating scene too, though, because I mean, as much as you guys have been talking about, it can point to the past and like Anakin's origin and even Yoda's species and origin, but it also has incredible implications going forward. And that's where the episode ends up going. And with the whole idea of harvesting Force sensitivity from blood, which is a incredibly terrifying thought for the Empire. It's a terrifying thought, I guess, but so it's this kind of like changes everything. It adds it from this point forward, even in the episode, it adds the urgency that Din has to get back to the child, because it's pointed out that if they are to continue the experiments, they still need access to the donor. They're referring to the child, and Dr. Pershing is adamant that he's not going to disappoint Moff Gideon. And it's pointed out that the communication is only 3 days old, which then finally tells Din that he did not kill Moff Gideon in the season finale.
And I'd almost forgotten that. I hadn't really thought about that in that point in the episode, at least. I probably thought of it before, but the idea of like, none of them know, which, by the way, how hard would it have been as he flew over the crash site at the end of episode 8 to just blast it a little bit, but nobody ever does that. No, it's just fly away.
Well, he might have, but Gideon might have wasn't there. He got out and moved away from the ship.
Mm-hmm. I love how we're setting up potential. Like we know we've got our Bo-Katan and team out there. Like this is all going to come back together, and it's just it's awesome to think about.
Just in terms of like the overall season, that's kind of how season 1 played out too. Was like Din met all these characters, Queel and Kara and IG-11, and then by the 2-part season finale, all of them were brought back for that finale. So I think there's a strong likelihood we'll see Boba Fett again, and Bo-Katan. I'm sure we're going to see them in that story play out, and of course we're going to see the Jedi as well. Hopefully this week. So Din has to immediately he fights his way out, and he's going to leave and head back to the town to make sure that the child is safe, and he splits off from the group because he can get back on his jetpack much quicker than the rest of them. So he I love how he goes to the heat shaft and just skyrockets up out of the volcanic air vent.
And shoots 2 stormtroopers as he comes out without even having seen them.
Well, I just got to say, I love that I was wrong. In the trailer, you see him in the cave, the snow cave, which I don't want to talk about what happens there. But no, when you see him in the snow cave, and he either doesn't have the jetpack on or it's obscured, just briefly. And so when I'm watching the trailer, I'm like, oh no, does he lose his jetpack? Like he just got that thing. And then at the beginning of that episode is when he, takes it off to give to the guy. And I'm like, oh, there it goes. And then, oh no, it's just, he just left it in the ship or whatever. So I'm so glad like we're, hanging in there with the jetpack.
Mm-hmm.
It's also great to see how much he uses it and how well he is at using it. Because when he first got it, he was a little rocky with it, but he's improved. So Din jetpacks back to the town, and meanwhile the focus of most of the rest of the episode is on the escape of Kara, Greef, and the Mithril. And so they fight their way back to the shuttle bay, and amidst all the fighting, their quickest way to escape is for Kara to steal the Trexler Marauder, which I knew that was going to come into play.
Oh, yeah. Why point it out if you're not going to use it, right?
Right. Which turns out to work fairly well for him. The Empire had it all fueled up and ready for him. And so Kara goes in there and launches it. And the other 2 manage to jump in, and they head off into the canyon, promptly crushing the Mithril speeder as they launch off
speeder.
of the. Yeah.
I tell you what, that this episode, more than anything else that they've had, it feels like playing a Star Wars RPG. Mm-hmm. Like I've played a tabletop version of Star Wars a few times, and this is hands down exactly like at least 1 or 2 of the scenarios that I've run for people.
Well, I love how they just, you take the main character, just literally jets out of the scene, and he's gone for a good, 7-8 minutes, and they just hold their own so well.
Yep.
And we saw from Gallery, I just like the sincerity of how much, and like Gina Carano's respect for Carl Weathers and everything, like, and it's just, you really get the impression that they really enjoyed working together, and I want to see more of them. I was, I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but I'm sure they'll be back.
And so this scene too ended up being also one that connects back to episode 4, because it plays out a lot like the Death Star Trench Star run.
Well, and then even Carl Weathers, the sitting in the turret seat, with the picture from episode 4, almost the exact same targeting computer.
Yep. Well, and even that, it kind of was an echo to the trench run, but also just when the Millennium Falcon escapes the Death Star and they're trying to shoot the TIE fighters that are chasing them.
Well, and the audio engineering is so brilliant because I was telling my wife too, like I love the First Order ties, like those are cool, but this seeing an old school TIE pilot, original trilogy TIE pilot, and the sound effects are identical. It's absolutely exactly the same cockpit, same sound effects. I mean, it sounds like inside Vader's, in the trench. So I love that.
Well, and I'm an episode 6 girl, so seeing the speeder bike stormtroopers was so fun.
Oh man,
They didn't really make it too far though, but yeah, they were.
But they're a little more competent than just foot soldiers. So.
Well, one of them almost gets. He boards the ship too, and almost actually, almost gets in, and then Grief Karga takes him out. And so it's after the speeder bike chase that the TIE fighters come into play, and I think Grief manages to destroy one of them, but there's still 3 others that are chasing him, and they exit out of the canyon and are flying down the open field to try to head back to the town. And of course, intensity's high. They're not sure if they're going to make it. And then, of course, the Razor Crest shows up, just like the Millennium Falcon did in episode 4.
Exactly.
But with quite a bit more. Seeing Din be the pilot of that and take out the TIE fighters, which was a really fun scene.
Yeah.
The child was the best.
Sitting there with the cookies, like the little,
cookies. And he's got his hands up and he's cheering. It's a roller coaster ride.
And like every dad ever, and then the whole turning around like puke, and he's like, oh boy, I got what do you say? Like I got an onboard maintenance issue. I got to work out. It's like dabbing him. This is like me driving the other day, like reaching back for the pacifier, like just hang on. Oh my gosh.
I have to say, I mean, and I know we keep saying this over and over and over again, but the puppeteering of that just was phenomenal. I mean, it was gross, but adorable kind of all at the same time. I mean, at least it was blue vomit, and that doesn't really I don't know, it helped it somehow, but
it's cuter.
Yeah.
Well, I love how it's so like a kid, like they're having the greatest time of their life and then vomit. It's like nice. They're still smiling, and there it comes.
Just another day at the amusement park.
Oh yeah.
So Grief gets on the comm with Din at this point and wants to buy him a drink, but Din, of course, can't stay because he doesn't want Moff Gideon to have time to show up and try to take the child, and so he wants to get going. And then we have a scene where the New Republic Captain Carson Teva shows up, which
I love him.
They have been showing up more than I expected.
Yeah,
I think you were talking about how all these characters are going to become more relevant in the end, and I think that's what's going to happen, because they have Captain Teva Carson talking about how, like, in the core they don't believe that what's going on, but these are not isolated incidents and there's something happening here and we have to stop it before it's too late. It's like that's definitely foreshadowing that they're going to continue to show up and do these kind of routine questionings, and then at the end, I think maybe the New Republic is going to play a part in whatever happens with Din.
And that gets back to this, like J.J. Abrams, early on, like I was seeing this in like 13, 14, like when you started hearing the first whispers of Force Awakens, and the concept of, I think if you did the analogy here, it'd be like almost like this dude's on patrol, in like Argentina, in like 1950. And it's like, there's a lot of like suspicious behaving German dudes here. I noticed, like that kind of like, these guys who like these Nazis who got away, or these, in this case, these Imperials. And it's like, we're back here at the core, kind of rebuilding stuff. And it's like, we need an effort out here, because it's these guys, they're not giving up.
Well, and the resistance hasn't started yet, right? So the resistance from the sequels hasn't been started. So what you have here is the seeds of that, the people that are seeing what's going on and that are starting to, go, okay, we do need to resist this return of the Empire because it's not done yet.
Yeah. Right. And to piggyback off that, when Captain Carson is talking to Kara, the music in the background is a version of March of the Resistance. So definitely, this is, I mean, ideally, I think the New Republic wanted to be, like the Empire's gone, the New Republic's here, and peace and stability to the galaxy is here forever. And
I don't know about you guys. I did get a little riff though off that, Father, with also like Rogue One. Maybe it seemed a little similar to that too, which in the context of talking to her about Alderaan, and Rogue One at the core of that whole movie is the Death Star, the first one. And so I don't know. Yeah, it was a real legacy track, and looking forward to. So.
Yeah, so this is definitely planting those seeds of what will become the Resistance. And I mean, even like Leia, she was heavy in the New Republic. She's a senator in Bloodline, one of the novels that takes place after this time frame. So I mean, she was instrumental in building up the New Republic, but then she also becomes instrumental in the Resistance. So this is just all part of that. Grassroots seeds of the Resistance that are gonna come out, which is cool.
And they really make us wonder if Kara is going to join, because at the beginning she says like, "Oh, I'm not a joiner, Blue," but then after he leaves, after Carson leaves, then the camera kind of like slowly stays on her and kind of like pans out, and you kind of you see that look on her face, like she's really thinking about what the last thing that he said to her, I'm sorry for your loss, and it sort of is planting the seed like, wow, I did lose everyone that I love to this evil, this group of people.
That's
and
still
so
there.
Right,
yeah, well, but I think for her there's a growth away from just revenge, because if you remember when Din tries to get her to help him in the first season, she's like, no, not interested, blah blah blah. And the moment he says, they're not, I forget if he says they're not like warlords or whatever, they're Imperial, she instantly is like, I'm in. So it's just like it's all about getting back at what they did to her. But it's like now it's like, well, that's always going to be with me, but there's something beyond that. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I kind of get that impression from her, like now that she's actually in this sort of smaller, here's a Catholic term, subsidiarity, right? Like she's in her immediate community here, cleaning things up. Now there's like this, well, we need to do this on a bigger scale too, Yeah,
and she's sort of found a purpose through Navarro, hasn't she?
Yeah.
And I think that's actually super key in her character growth, because if she was still just bent on revenge, she wouldn't have become the marshal and cleaned up the system.
Right.
So this is definitely Kara in a more in a better position in her life. She's moved away from revenge and is on to rebuilding the community and wanting to play a role in something that's bigger than just herself. So that could be very easily foreshadowing a New Republic join up in the future. The other thing that I wanted to point out in regards to the New Republic troopers is they're sort of, he's pointing out that he's found all these isolated incidents, and he thinks that they're connected. And so far, the Razor Crest is the connection between all of them, at least the ones that we've seen. With the prisoner, they saw the Razor Crest and knew that was there. And then on the ice planet, and then even on Navarro, even though Grief tries to sort of say, well, the transponder logs are, they don't really work out here, and this isn't Coruscant, but they at least recognize that where Din is involved, these incidences are not just random, but there's something going on. So yeah, I fully expect to see more of them in the future episodes. And then we get to the finale part of the episode, which is definitely the most ominous so far. we go to Moff Gideon's Imperial cruiser, where there's a comm officer that gets informed by the repair alien that the tracking beacon was planted on the Razor Crest. Another episode 4 connection there when they plant the tracker on the Millennium Falcon.
Mm-hmm. And also that underbelly shot of the ship at the beginning, which was beautiful. And I was like, that has to be, it looks like a practical model that they used.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
That.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful. I was in shock.
But so this comm officer goes to inform Moff Gideon of that. And Moff Gideon is informed that Din does indeed still have the asset, Baby Yoda, and that they will be ready for him. And then he surveys what looks like some new form of stormtrooper.
The Dark Troopers.
Mm-hmm.
This is a deep dive. Yeah, this is a legacy deep dive.
Yep.
Well, the Kyle Katarn ones were, I believe they were actually droids. So there's
correct.
There was a comic book series, though, that used the concept of Dark Troopers being stormtroopers that had been imbued with the dark side of the Force. And so this is legacy stuff, so it doesn't doesn't count anymore, but may count
like it
again, right? So they're kind of pulling some of this old legacy stuff to put back in. Now this would be a new spot because the Dark Troopers in the legacy were pre-rebellion, I think, even. So it was kind of where the Inquisitors fit in with the Rebels series. So similar kind of thing there. Just, he didn't use full Jedi. He used these troopers that he had infused with the dark side of the Force. The Emperor did.
Did they look similar to what we see?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because
you what you see of them, you only see like a small frame in a comic book, but they look like almost like scout troopers, but in black armor. Okay. So
that also matches what the Star Wars Dark Forces, the video game, how they look.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, just because I'm thinking here, how many people would Palpatine let in on his I'm on the giant, video game claw game thing on Exegol, making Snokes. I don't think, but my guess would be, Moff Gideon is this, committed Imperial who's trying to make, carve out a space. He's sorry, I'm going to quote Jango Fett. He's just a simple man making his way in the world or making his way in the galaxy. No, but that would be my guess. At first I was thinking, oh my gosh, like Snoke, First Order. I'm not so sure. I think this might be like he knows about the Jedi because he's got the Darksaber. There's this Mandalore connection.
He's also in the last episode. At least it's implied. Long live the Empire. I think he's doing this for the glory of the Empire. Not himself or not, for his own power, but he's still fully invested in having the Empire reclaim its position in the galaxy.
The Empire seems to be very big on emulating what works, right? Like the Death Star worked. Let's make another one. Okay, the Death Star 2. It didn't work, but let's make Starkiller Base, right? So the clones, that's where the answer was, right? The clones were the thing that worked. So let's make some clones and let's just improve on them this time. Let's make them bigger and better.
You even see that a little bit in Force Awakens with the little back and forth between Kylo Ren and Hux. Hux threatening that maybe your troopers aren't that great. Maybe we'll need some a clone army. So this is still this. Well, yeah.
There's also a question there. Are they making clones, or are they just trying to take blood from Baby Yoda and transfuse it into already because they're even at the end of the episode, or Dr. Pershing had mentioned it in the communication that the volunteer for this will die if we try to continue without more blood from the donor. So
who's that?
Who's the volunteer?
Yeah.
So I'm sort of shying away from the idea that they're trying to clone.
Yeah.
But I think that they're just using information from the cloning process to try to pull the M count and the biological sort of things to try to make it work. So I don't think clones are because the clones, they worked, but they also, with their super accelerated age, they've all they're all old by this point, and I don't know if they have the time to invest in a whole new batch of clones.
Right. Well, the volunteer is not Moff Gideon. So that's about
right.
That's about it, because he's the one the messages to. So
he would want to make sure that it works and doesn't kill you before he becomes a volunteer.
Right.
But that could very well be his target since he does have the Darksaber.
All sorts of...
Or maybe he wants to take over Mandalore and then infuse all of the Mandalorians with the M-count blood and make them into his kind of like...
Super soldiers.
Super soldiers, yeah.
That
just
is
a thought.
That is a terrifying thought.
Well, Den needs some competition, man. He's now that he's got the jetpack and he's a little better with the armor and he knows how to recruit forces to his side. He's pretty much invincible at this point. So you got to throw some more struggle against him.
And I think it's such a quick moment that you don't. Well, you notice it because it has a big impact. But in episode 8 from season 1. They're fighting, like all this awesome like choreography, and Moff Gideon just strolls out, one shot precisely at like where to hit Din under the helmet. Like it's not like he's not even wearing anything.
Right.
Which freaked me out because like just that vulnerability, and that shows obviously that knowledge and that kind of thing. So what else does he know?
Cool. Well, I think we can't really answer any of the big questions yet. So. Do you guys have any other random thoughts or anything from this episode?
I just want to throw one quick thing out that it's Carl Weathers, as Grief Karga is totally his own character, but I really feel like there's kind of this little bit of an homage or hat tip to Lando going on. You've kind of got like the style.
He's got the flair, yeah.
But he's not, it's a very different character. He doesn't have like that smooth talker kind of, scoundrel kind of thing going, but the also like the kind of like guy with a shady past who's now a responsible, respectable administrator, and so it is kind of a little tip I think to that. So I'm getting a kick out of that part of his character.
And he's making an honest living. We go back to those black market weapons. Like instead of taking the black market weapons to sell them, he just wants to destroy them. He wants the Empire gone.
Yeah.
He knows that the stuff's there. He's like, no, we're not taking anything. We're blowing it up. That's
he's not talking like head of the bounty hunter guild. He's like, I want them off my planet. Like this is like, and all we know about him, I think, is when Moff Gideon's saying their names and that big kind of twist at the end of the first season, and he just calls him like a disgraced magistrate, like with no like okay here somewhere else, like he had to come here and this was the only job he could get, but So yeah, that I'm sure we'll get more of that filled in over time too.
I did have we heard the Wilhelm Scream once, and so that's another tie to the original trilogy, sort of.
Yeah.
And many other movies.
But then there were also a couple of spots where there were not Wilhelm Screams. They were like new, but also very iconic screams.
Yes. Yeah, and actually, for anybody who doesn't know the Wilhelm Scream, that's a scream that's traditionally used in movies once, sort of as like a good luck charm and a kind of an inside Hollywood joke that started in the 1950s. But Skywalker Sound has actually chosen a new scream for ever since after. So I think the first movie that they made with a new scream, which they have not identified officially, is Solo. And then from Solo on, they're using some other scream in Star Wars and
so in
other Disney properties. Yes. So there are a lot of people out there who are trying to identify what's the new Wilhelm Scream. And so anyways, so that was one thing. And then the other thing was Admiral Jeff Blue Jeans, who was the crew member who was in the background, that I'm sure all of y'all have seen. If you're watching this, you've probably seen it online. But yeah, I looked on IMDb and the name was on there, Admiral Jeff Blue Jeans, played by Sam Winner. Whether that's his name or not.
That Kenner, like that fake Kenner action figure, is it fake or is that someone's going to make it?
I'm sure it's fake.
It's probably made today.
Gosh. Yeah, somebody had photoshopped a
3D printer to the rescue. Here we go.
Yeah,
like the hand and the leg kind of behind the wall as a Kenner action figure.
I think you can I don't know if it's an Apple Watch, but I mean it's a very specific wristwatch.
It's very obviously not fitting the Star Wars universe. That's for sure.
The thing is if they did make it, it would sell. I mean, people would buy it.
No, I mean, that's the Camtono thing, like the next phase of something that was not originally planned.
But I'm just absolutely amazed that I did not notice that the first time that I watched it.
No.
It's a blink and you miss it sort of thing.
Very fast. Yeah. I was watching for it too, because, I saw you guys post it before I even saw this episode, and I was watching for it and I was like, wait, go back. Cause that's gotta be the scene. I saw them in the organization that they were in. I'm like, go back. Okay. There it is. But whoever caught that, good eye.
Yeah.
So there's one scene we didn't talk about that I wanted to. That was them eating the soup. The child and Din eating the soup.
Yep.
And I thought that was really. I'm not sure what we're supposed to take away from that just yet, but coming on the heels of the episode where he learns that his way, the Mandalorian way of like holding onto the mask all the time, it was very interesting to see him eat with the child and to be raising his mask and then making a point of kind of the child looking at him under the mask. So the child knows what he looks like. It's not,
but he also
hasn't taken it off.
Yeah. I mean that's
there's still a view there,
right? And I mean having a mask myself, that it's way easier to use a straw than it is to try to like drink or anything. It's.
They had a great one of those, how it should have ended things, for Mandalorian. And it was like so funny because it's him. Well, they had two things that I thought was hilarious. It was him in the Sin, and he's got, that quick scene when he's with Dr. Pershing. And he's like, what did you do to him? And then it's just like, 30 seconds later, and he's like, what do you mean the Emperor's still alive? Like, he keeps like going further and further. He just keeps shooting troopers as they come and like learning more information that would really be good to know. But then they show him, like, it's the scene where he takes the helmet off, like, in the Sanctuary episode. And then it just cuts over like everybody outside, like, look, and they all look over in the open window, and he's like, oh, scrambling because he's right there with his face out. But I thought that was funny. Like, someone's got to have seen him, right? No.
Not very practical, but it is the way. Okay, well, I think that's it from us. There is just one other bit of listener feedback that I wanted to get to, and it actually relates to the whole Din not taking off his mask. This comes from C by Zand on YouTube, and I'm sorry if that's not how you pronounce your YouTube name, but I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it. But he said, I disagree with the possibility that Din's group, the Children of the Watch, is incorrect. And so I'm assuming that he means he disagrees with us about the possibility of the group being a religious cult. He said, I see them as a Benedict option or even Hasidim to compare to Judaism in the face of a failing Mandalorian society that then falls entirely to the Empire. A group of followers of the Mandalore break off and take up the ancient ways and live communally, caring for those within their society. The part about the helmet is a rule, a religious institution that protects the collective and empowers the one. By never seeing their faces, Mandalorians are faceless, a la the faceless one in Game of Thrones. This ensures that all the outsiders ever see is the Mandalorian, and it empowers the wearer because his enemies see a people, an army in one helmet, even when alone. Add to it a deeper consideration. The rule of the helmet is a promise. It is a promise of, well done, my good and faithful servant. He is not expected to wear it forever, just as long as he can. There is life after. True, it may be because he is an invalid or because he is too old, but then he becomes one of the elders who passed down that teaching. Din even hints about the elders being among the covert. Also, it seems he could take it off for love, but then he goes into the covert never to emerge again, it would seem. However, the rule makes it clear that the helmet is both protection of his people, a symbol of their strength, and a promise that as long as he wears it, he will defend, protect, and reap for his people.
Which I agree with. I think it's a good observation because you see anytime they reference him, anytime they talk to him, it's like he's got the whole weight of the legend of every Mandalorian ever on his shoulders, which is a blessing and a curse in many cases. But, he lives up to it as well as he can. And that's because he's got the mask on, not because, comes in looking like a particular person, but that he is the Mandalorian.
Yeah, and I would say that, that it's totally a valid way to look at it. And I mean, reflecting even Angela, I think you had kind of brought this up last time when we were talking about it, and I thought this was a good way to approach it too. Was the issue I think that we were pointing out is that he doesn't have a knowledge regarding the Mandalorian people in general and their ways, because he even assumes that Bo-Katan and her group are not Mandalorians because they take off their helmet. And that's because he doesn't even recognize them, or he doesn't know the larger Mandalorian culture in general. He also lacks the knowledge of Mandalore, the planet. And that just sort of suggests a more cut off cult sort of hidden knowledge attitude rather than necessarily trying to break away from what is wrong with our society to be, go back to what's more traditional. So
we shall see.
I mean, either way, we're rooting for them all. So they're all good guys in our view anyway. So that is it from us for this episode. And of course, listeners, what did you think of The Siege? And definitely let us know, or emailing us or commenting on our Facebook and Twitter page. And you can email us any and all feedback at starwars@sqpn.com. And you can find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia and on Twitter at SQPN. And as always, we would like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Wars, including this week, Alan P., Doreen M., Randy S., Andrew P., and Cody. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And just a reminder that we did record our holiday special, and that is going to be released exclusively to patrons first. So if you do want to become a patron, visit the same site, sqpn.com/give, and you can listen to our holiday special early and join in on all the fun and be a patron and support us in what we do here at StarQuest. Of course, be sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single one when they release, and you can subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast player app, wherever it may be. You can also subscribe on the SQPN YouTube channel. Just be sure to click the bell for notifications. Also, please be sure to share, like, and retweet and all those things on social media when you see our episodes post, because that helps us get the word out and spread the show to more people who would be interested in hearing us talk about all things Star Wars and our Catholic faith. You can find previous episodes of The Secrets of Star Wars at sqpn.com/Star Wars. And until then, we will be back next week when we will be discussing the 5th episode of Season 2 of The Mandalorian. And so, until next time, Mike Creevy, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
It's my pleasure.
Thomas Sanjurjo, thanks for joining us this evening as well.
It's great to be here.
And Angela Cialana, thanks for joining us.
It was great. Now I got to go find some blue cookies.
And once again, I'm
blue milk. Right?
Yes. Once again, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.